Hello, my lovely people, and welcome to Owen's Mind, a light-hearted trip through the contents of my head and the world in general. And here's what's on my mind today. So today I'd like to discuss the fine line, as I see it, between supply and demand and profiteering. And it's a line I fear we're increasingly crossing or getting close to more and more. So let's start with supply and demand. What is supply and demand? Simply, supply and demand it's a price point that is set by regards the level of supply, the availability of a product or service, and the demand, how many people want to purchase that product or service. There's your supply and demand, okay? And it's been around for centuries. It's not a new concept. It's been around forever. And originally it was kind of placed on an item of rarity will have a higher price point because there's less of it in the world. Okay? You can also, things can become rare. Rarity can be generated. For example, let's take the death of a celebrity or the death of an artist. Their work might be worth so much and they produce it. So supply is constant. Then they pass away and all of a sudden supply stops. There will never be any more supply because they're dead. They will not create a new album. They won't create a new movie. They will not create a new work of art, whatever it happens to be. Also, if there was somebody of note, more people are going to now want a piece of that artist to remember them by if they were popular. So now demand has gone up, but supply has stagnated. It cannot go any higher. So now a rarity has been created. So the price goes up, because now demand is outweighing supply. Okay, so again, that is unavoidable. People die, sadly, that's just the way it is. There is also manufactured rarity, and this is where it starts to get a little murky. The OPEC countries, so oil producing and exporting countries, okay, they strictly control how many barrels of oil they produce per day in relation to the demand of the countries they supply, and that's so they can keep the price at a certain level. They could produce far more oil per day than they do and bring the price down, but they don't. They hold it at a certain level, so oil has always got a certain value per barrel, and it does fluctuate, and there is sort of ups and downs and twos and fro's a little bit. But essentially, they can control that price, and to their mind, it's just good business. We as consumers lose out because we're paying more than maybe we need to, but that's the way it is. The second one is De Beers, who have a control in the diamond industry. So this fact I got from the brilliant podcast No Such Thing as a Fish, and they said that diamonds out in the world are no more rare than emeralds, rubies, or sapphires. But those gems are all cheaper because companies like De Beers withhold a lot of the diamonds that are mined, so that supply is always low. It's lower than demand, so therefore the price is higher because more people want it than is available. So again, this is it's a manufactured rarity in this commodity to keep the price high. Okay, now, so demand going up does not always mean that prices go up. So a really common example is supermarkets in the hot weather. So demand for beer goes up and demand for, cold drinks, barbecue stuff, things you will have outdoors goes up. Go into store, prices come down. And the reason for this is because the supermarkets can increase supply. So supply can be increased. So we've got a far increasing demand. More people want it, but we can increase supply to meet it. We can overproduce a little bit and bring prices down, and supermarkets will do this, and even to a point where it's a loss leader, where they'll come in and the beer will be cheaper than they make money on, but they know someone's going to buy a 24-pack of beer, but they're going to buy a load of meat for the barbecue, and they're going to buy a disposable barbecue, and they're going to buy cutlery and plates and stuff that they can take out to the park and this kind of thing. So just because demand goes up doesn't always mean prices go up, because supply can also be raised to meet it. But then you get to such as airlines and holiday resorts. So in the UK, we have the spring break, the summer holiday for the kids. We break up from school. before the start of the new term. And this is kind of mid-July right through August. They start the new term in early September. So what you get all of a sudden is the entire nation's children off school for 6 to 7 weeks, from the second week in July to the end of August. So all of a sudden, the demand for family holidays skyrockets. The problem you have with airlines and hotels and places like Centre Parks, they cannot increase supply. If you're a hotel with 500 rooms, when more people want them, you cannot automatically find another 500 rooms. You've got 500, that's it. And an airline cannot find another 500 seats. You've got as many as your fleet will allow, and that's it. And the fact that more people want them, you cannot increase that supply. So price goes up. And then this, for me, this is where you lose me a little bit. So we've talked about supply and demand. Let's talk about profiteering. The definition of profiteering is to make or seek to make an excessive or unfair profit, especially illegal. Now, I'm not saying what these companies are doing is illegal. It's immoral, but it's not illegal. So whenever this happens, every year it happens in the UK. Centre Parks is, not going to pick on it, but it's an example that comes up every year, and it is always, people will accuse them of profiteering because their prices on certain resorts and certain rooms will triple within the space of a week. The week before the summer holidays and the week it starts, some things will actually triple in price. And people shout at them, "You're profiteering," and their response is, "Supply and demand, mate. We're not profiteering, it's just the way it is. It's supply and demand." That is their go-to excuse. So their go-to excuse, it's just supply and demand. Which brings me to my question. Why? Why? Yeah, it's a law. It's not a law. It's not even a law. It's the way it's been done for hundreds of years, supply and demand. And it's like, okay, that's not telling me why you have to raise the price. Because more people want it, it has to be more expensive. I don't agree with that. Here's another one. If you want supply and demand, what about first come, first served? Because by tripling the price, what you're doing is just making your good or your service elitist. What you're saying is only rich people can enjoy it during these times. Now, the government, to my mind, should have stepped in and said, look, you cannot do this during these weeks of the year. It's borderline profiteering. It's certainly immoral. But what they did is they went the other way and they actually said, right, from now on, schools are going to be able to fine parents who take their children out of school the week before the holiday commences to get that better deal on holidays. So you get fined for taking your children out of school that week before, and it's a hefty fine, or you can wait till they break up, not get fined, but then can't afford to go away. You can't afford the holiday. Because what they've done is they've jacked the prices up and it's become an elitist service now. And it's because more people want it, therefore it has to be more expensive. And I'm like, no, because what you're doing is you're supplying the same room, same level of service, same location, same staff costs. Your overheads haven't changed. The fact that more people want it just means you can charge 3 times as much. What's supply and demand? Okay. And no one's ever answered the why. They just say supply and demand and it's just the way it is. But it doesn't have to be that. Here's the problem. Here's the thing. I love Centre Parks. I've been many times. Never been with the kids because I can't afford it. I can afford to go through the week when the children are at school, but I can't afford to take them. So they're never going to build those memories, and when they get older, they're not going to become those regular customers. They're not going to add to that business going forward. You're not nurturing new customers, because as a parent, I can't afford to take them. Whereas if I could, we could build those nice family memories and they're going to see it as a positive place, a place they enjoy going, and then they're going to go, and then they're going to take their kids. And so you're losing that onward chain, if you will, because these prices now are so out of the reach of a lot of people. Jack Daniels, the whiskey producer, their trademark is all goods worth price charged. All goods are worth the price charged. Brilliant. For such as these airlines who put the prices up, and most recently, what was particularly egregious to me is when Thomas Cook went under, the other airlines immediately put the prices up because demand went up, because all of a sudden there's an airline not operating, people still want to go away. So prices went way up for a lot of other airlines. And sure enough, people pointed out, you're profiteering, and they went, supply and demand. It's just the way it is. And it's just not the way it should be. I mean, this happens all the time. Little examples you'll see. Price of a hotel room when a big sporting event is on in a city, or a big concert or something. Price of local hotels will go through the roof. Flowers on Valentine's Day. A bunch of red roses on Valentine's Day compared to the day before, the day after. Again, it's unnecessary. You're getting exactly the same product, but they're saying because more people want it, it has to be more expensive. And I can't see the argument. I just can't. And now we've got something, this new really egregious thing, which is called surge pricing. So surge pricing is essentially, it's supply and demand on the fly in real time. So Uber use this, and essentially how it works, and I've not really looked into it too much, but essentially how it works, the idea I get is that you can book a ride with Uber. If they have got a high demand and a low number of drivers, the price has gone up. So, and you have to agree to that before they will come and pick you up. The prices are now higher because we haven't got enough drivers for the people who want it. And that's what they do on the fly. There was a store in America that did this. And it did it, I don't know if it actually opened, but it did it as a test, it did it as a trial. And the idea was that they surge price every product in it. So all the shelf edge labels were all digital displays. And what happened was during busy periods, the price of all these items that are regularly bought, such as your milk and your eggs and your cheese and things like that, went up on the fly through the day. And people were arguing, going, that's ridiculous. And the store's argument was, well, no, because if you come in later at night when the store's quiet, everything's much cheaper. So over the day, it balances out. Okay? Two things. Number one, people go into a store when they're free. So they know that at sort of maybe in the UK, sort of between 4:30 and 5:30, when people are finishing work, you nip into the store for a couple of bits and pieces. Those prices can be through the roof. And that's because you're there. You're not going to go home and go back out at 3 in the morning because a tin of beans is now 20p, and when you went at 4:30 it was like £4. So that's point number one. Point number two, don't lie. If you're saying, well, no, everything will balance out over time, if everything was balanced out, you wouldn't use the surge pricing. If you're saying, well, a lot of people are going to come in at the busy period and pay that little bit more, but then other people are going to come in at another time and they're going to pay that little bit less, so it's going to average out. The average price would just be the price in any other store. You wouldn't need the surge price, and you're doing it because it's going to make you more money. That's the only reason you'd put it in place. You wouldn't put it there if it was going to be balanced out and everyone's going to end, and you as a store were going to end up making the same amount of money you would have made had you not done it. So don't try and pull the wool over our eyes. We're not falling for it. So, yeah, hopefully surge pricing will die a death. There was a Coca-Cola did not do this. They made the machine, they never put it into production, but they had a surge priced Coke machine which had a temperature gauge on it, and the hotter the day got, the more expensive the drink got. And again, I think it was, they tested it. I don't know how far they actually got if they built the machine, but it was definitely a concept, it was definitely considered, and I don't know the reason they stepped away. Hopefully it was a moral thing going, no, we can't do this. I don't know. But this was a real thing. There's articles you can read about it. And it's just this insidious way of getting more and more money out of us for supplying exactly the same thing. And it really bothers me. And yes, they're going to make more money. And in a business, you are going to make money. it's not illegal, but it's certainly immoral. It's certainly immoral. And is it profiteering? Is supply and demand profiteering at a certain point? It's hard to say. It increasingly feels like it. I'm not an economist, but increasingly feeling like it's going that way, where it's just at a point where it's like, your hands are tied. During the school holidays, your hands are tied. So pay it or don't come. And it's just, it feels so much like we are being punished. And especially if you've not got a very high income, it's like you are going to miss out because of supply and demand. Because hundreds of years ago, somebody came up with this concept for rarefied items, which we have now managed to manufacture a rarity. We can create a rarity where there wasn't one, because demand goes up. So therefore, if you've got 500 of a particular product and 500 people want it, supply and demand meet each other. All of a sudden, if your product is really successful, really popular, and 1,000 people want it, that's now outstripped the supply. So rather than first come, first serve, and you still sell 500 units, we're going to double the price, and we're going to make twice as much money. Good business. But it means people who would have bought your product now can't, because they can't afford that higher price. And some of them, even if they can afford that higher price, they know that 2 weeks ago it wasn't that price, and they won't stand for it. So this is just something I wanted to get off my chest. This I find particularly egregious. I do think there should be something, it needs to be addressed. If it could be explained to me in a way that makes sense, I'd quite happily listen. I just can't see it. I just can't see the argument is that this is just the way it is. To me, is not an argument. Supply and demand is just the way it is. It doesn't have to be. You chose to follow it, so you can choose not to. You can choose to keep your price as you are. If for any reason if your costs went up during these busy periods, say for example, you had a service, you provided a service, whatever it is, I don't know, a car wash. And in the summer months, demand goes way up. So you have to employ more staff to cope for that extra demand. Yeah, I can see that. You're paying out more, so you need to recoup that. But such as things that have got a fixed supply, like a hotel. If you've got 500 rooms and you've got the staff to manage those 500 rooms, when 10,000 people want those rooms, it doesn't change your business dynamic. You don't need to employ more staff because you've only got 500 rooms, you've already got enough staff to deal with them. So you can't even justify the price range because you've got greater outgoings. You haven't. So this is just my little rant, guys. It really bugs me. Like I say, if one of you can explain it to me in a way that makes sense, and I'd be like, okay, fair enough now. I've now got the knowledge and I can see why they do it, and I don't agree with it, but there's a reason to it and they're not just taking our money, then fair enough. But at the minute, until I get that knowledge, this really, really bugs me, and it has done for a while now. So I want to get it out there. It's out of my system. There you go. So that's it, guys. That's just my little thought for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. And until next time, bye for now.